AI art is everywhere. We see it all over Instagram, all the way to professional studios using it, even some people using it to win art competitions. But why should a beginner artist really care about this? I started learning art when generative AI or generative images wasn't that great yet. And really, it was really easy to figure out what's AI and what's really created by real humans and real artists. But I can't imagine a world where I had to start from the beginning and can't distinguish between what's real and what's not. And that's kind of where we are now. But why does that matter? I think it's important because generative AI doesn't really care about reality, doesn't care about what is possible and what is not. And that becomes very important when we're trying to study the fundamentals. For example, if I'm trying to study anatomy and figure drawing, I could be using the wrong references that have completely wrong proportions, completely wrong anatomy, thinking that this is a real photo or thinking that this is from a real artist. But I'll be spending so much time just learning the wrong things. But one might argue, well, most artists don't draw reality, so why does it matter and why should we care? I think the reason is that when an artist does something stylized or does something that changes the proportions or changes things, all of that stylization, all of those things are intentional. And the intention and all of that can be studied, and we can really figure out why it was done this way and really figure out what we can learn from it. But if it is random and we don't understand which part of it is stylized and which part of it is real, it can be very hard for a beginner artist or any artist that's trying to learn from these references to actually learn and improve, and we might be doing more damage than anything. I think the second important thing is, as beginner artists or even any artist in this world of AI generative images, we need to value our art, value our process, and value our work. It's very hard nowadays when we try and compare ourselves to everything that is on social media, and we need to compete with generative AI images because those things can generate things very fast and very quick and very detailed. But when we look at art and we look at our art, there's a little bit of soul in it. There's a little bit of piece of us really involved in the painting. This can even go for fan art. I also see this a lot of times when a lot of artists, when we try to create fan art, we put a little bit of our personal touch into it. And AI maybe cannot really put any intentional, soul or intentional thing into a piece. It's just very random and it may look good or detailed. But when we start looking at it properly and try and look at it properly, we realize that it lacks a lot of that creativity, a lot of that intention, a lot of that soul that an artist can put into a piece when they're doing it. I know it's hard to think this way, and I know it's very difficult because especially nowadays when maybe some of us aspiring artists or beginner artists think that one day we may want to start selling our art or maybe find a professional path through this. But we see that, for example, Etsy is filled with AI generative images, and we think that it could be almost impossible to compete with that and sell our art when these platforms are just flooded with AI generative images. But I would say that we shouldn't be discouraged. As we learn, as we grow, we start to find our voice. We start to figure out what we do and what we like, and we start to build our audience. Yes, maybe these platforms are becoming harder and harder to sell our art to an audience that doesn't know us, but there are other ways and other means. For example, selling art personally at events where people can actually appreciate real artists and the real work that they've done. And this really becomes even more difficult when we see even competing or participating in competitions, and we see that generative images or AI generative images are winning these competitions without, the judges knowing. Because it's becoming harder and harder, and it's only when we start thinking about it and other people start looking at it and analyzing it that they start to pinpoint things that don't look right and don't seem right, and they start questioning it. and they start figuring out that this could be AI generated. So I would say like we shouldn't be discouraged, and we should continue and keep an eye out and be very conscious as beginner artists when we see these things. I'm not saying go around and accuse people just anything that you see that is generative AI, but every once in a while when you look at something, try investigate. If you're not sure why was it done this way, it's either a learning opportunity from the artist, or maybe there's something wrong and maybe generative AI was used in it. Now, why does any of this matter? You might say, I'm just a beginner artist. This does not affect me. This does not impact me. Why should I really care about any of this ethical issue that comes with all of generative AI images? We all know that the big thing about this is really an ethical issue. The artist, a lot of artists, their work was just stolen directly without their consent and used to be fed into these AI algorithms to create these platforms to be able to generate what they are generating today. And I know that, artists and consumers are standing up against generative AI and trying to really be an advocate for artists and real creativity. And I think that is really great. So I think the real question is, if AI generative images was still, AI art could be done ethically, would you still be drawing? Would you still be painting? I think that is the real question. Because for me, the answer would always be yes. For me, the process is what matters. As beginner artists, maybe it can be very frustrating that we can't produce what we want to produce. It's very frustrating that we have these great ideas and these great aspirations, but we see that it requires a lot of work, a lot of effort. And when we look at AI generative images, we see they can do it in a few seconds. We may just be discouraged and want to give up. But I would say that even if this was done ethically, I would continue to draw. I would continue to practice and get better at art, because as much as the end product or the end piece is important, I think the process and learning and improving and all of that is as important for me as it is the final product. So what would you do if generative images or generative AI can be done ethically? Would you still keep on drawing? Because if the answer is yes, then you should continue and you shouldn't be discouraged by any of this. Now, what can we do as beginner artists? We're not in the industry. We don't know what can be done, or we may not have that much influence. I think the few things that we can do. The first thing is to raise awareness about this issue. If anytime someone talks to us about this, we can let them know why it's not right, what are the issues, and how is this platform even developed, so that they understand why artists are standing up against generative AI. The second thing we can do is to be mindful and try and understand and not support generative AI. We're starting to see it more and more. Again, as I mentioned, we see it in competitions. We even start to see some people getting into artist alleys in conventions, thinking, and the people that judges that got them into artist alley, thinking that these people are creating real art. But slowly we're finding out that some of these people are just using generative AI and selling and making a lot of money. So be mindful of that and stop supporting people that just use generative AI to try and pass as their own art. And I think the most important thing we can do as beginner artists is to continue to draw and to continue to practice and to continue to get better. I think I don't want to be in a world where, creativity dies and everything is done using just generative AI. And I want to be in a world where I can continue to matter and my art can continue to matter and I can continue to learn and show my art to the world.